Ever get that feeling, like somewhere along the line they kind of skipped over the really important stuff in school?
Oh, absolutely. Like they prepped us for all this academic stuff, but forgot the owner's manual for life itself.
Right. Like how to actually handle all the curveballs life throws, the doubts, the moments where you just feel so overwhelmed.
Totally. It's that gap between knowledge and like real practical wisdom. We know a lot about the world, but what about navigating our own inner world?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? This isn't a new problem. Philosophers, like way back when, were grappling with this too. How do we actually live well? It's a timeless question.
It really is. And with everything coming at us these days, the information overload, the choices,
Yeah.
having a solid framework for navigating it all is more important than ever.
Which brings us to our deep dive today. Stoicism. The author of this one book we're looking at, it was like he stumbled on this ancient philosophy and finally found the guidance he was missing. And honestly, the more I've looked into it, the more I think it could be super valuable for our listeners too.
100%. It's surprisingly relevant. Stoicism offers this incredibly resilient approach to life, not about controlling everything around you, but understanding what you can influence.
I love how practical it is. You'd think something from ancient Greece and Rome would be kind of dusty, but it's all about inner strength, not getting swept up in every little thing that happens.
Exactly. It's about finding that center when things get chaotic, making decisions from a place of clarity, not just reacting on autopilot.
What really struck me is the idea that our happiness, our well-being, it's not determined by external stuff like, money or what others think. It's about our character, our choices.
It's so empowering, right? It puts you back in the driver's seat. You're not just at the mercy of whatever life throws at you.
Our author uses this great surfing analogy. You wouldn't just paddle out into massive waves without knowing the basics of surfing.
Right, you'd get crushed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need some understanding, some theory, before you hit those waves. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for wipeouts.
And it's the same with life. Trying to navigate all the complexities without any guiding principles is like trying to surf without knowing up from down.
So today, we're getting into that theory of Stoicism, those core principles. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is Stoicism? What's the heart of it?
Well, at its most fundamental, Stoicism is the art of living well. It tackles that age-old question, how do we live a good life? But it's a very action-oriented approach. Epictetus, one of the key Stoic philosophers, compared it to a craft.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like a sculptor working with marble or a carpenter with wood. Our lives are the raw material, and we're working on the art of living.
So every day is a chance to shape ourselves, to refine our approach.
Exactly. Every interaction, every challenge, it's an opportunity to kind of sculpt our character, to train our responses. And it's not just for some elite group, it's for anyone who wants to navigate life with more wisdom, more resilience.
Yeah, there's this common misconception that Stoics are these, emotionless robots.
Right, that they just suppress everything.
But from what I've gathered, that's not really accurate.
Not at all. The Stoics weren't about denying emotions. They understood that desires and feelings are part of being human. But they aimed to understand and manage them so they didn't become overwhelming. Seneca, who had his own share of turmoil, he wrote, "No school has more goodness and gentleness. None has more love for human beings."
Doesn't sound very cold and unfeeling, does it?
Definitely not. So it's more about understanding those feelings, not letting them control your decisions. Like, as our source puts it, taming that inner emotional wolf.
That's a great image. The wolf might still growl, but you don't have to let it run wild. Acknowledge it's there, but choose your path based on reason and values, not just impulsive reactions.
And the goal of all this self-work, this taming, is to achieve what the Greeks called eudaimonia, that sense of a life well lived.
Yes, eudaimonia. It's not just fleeting happiness, it's a deeper sense of fulfillment, living in alignment with your values, your true nature. And Stoics believed that managing emotions and focusing on what you control were key to achieving this. So a very practical philosophy for navigating the ups and downs, for finding meaning and purpose. Now, for some context, where did this all begin?
Okay, so it all started around the 3rd century BCE with Zeno of Citium. He was a merchant, and his story's pretty interesting. He was on a trading voyage, and get this, his ship sank. He lost everything.
Wow, talk about a setback.
Okay.
So how did losing everything lead to founding a whole philosophy?
Well, Zeno's father was a merchant too, but he often brought back books from Athens. So after the shipwreck, Zeno ends up in Athens and wanders into a bookstore. He gets hooked on the writings, especially about Socrates. He asks the bookseller where he can find people who live like Socrates. And at that moment, Crates the cynic was walking by, and the bookseller points and says, "Follow that man."
You're kidding. That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty cinematic. So Zeno becomes a disciple of Crates, this rather unconventional philosopher. And later in life, he reflects on that shipwreck and says, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck." He saw it as the turning point that led him to philosophy.
From losing everything to finding a whole new way of thinking. That's a powerful shift. Who are some of the other big names who came after Zeno, especially during the Roman Empire? It seems like that's when Stoicism really took off.
Yeah, the Roman Stoics are super influential because their writings are so practical and relatable. First, you have Seneca, who lived a very complex life. He was a playwright, a wealthy advisor to emperors, exiled, and even a tutor to Nero.
Wow, sounds like he needed a solid philosophy to navigate all that.
Right. His letters give this really personal, insightful look at applying Stoicism to daily life. Then there's Musonius Rufus. Maybe not as famous, but a highly respected teacher. He really emphasized the lived experience of philosophy. His lectures covered everything from food choices to relationships, and he believed it was for everyone, men and women.
That focus on everyday ethics and accessibility resonates with me. Who else is there?
Next is Epictetus, who lived an incredible life. He was born into slavery, his name literally meaning acquired or owned, but he became a very influential philosopher after gaining his freedom. His teachings, especially in the Enchiridion, are very direct and focus on what we can and can't control.
Wow. From slavery to becoming this leading philosopher, that's a testament to Stoicism's power. And finally, there's the most well-known Roman Stoic.
Marcus Aurelius, the emperor. His meditations are like his personal journal, reflections on Stoic principles as he ruled an empire. It offers this very human perspective on applying these ideas to even the most demanding of lives.
So we have a merchant, a wealthy advisor, a former slave, and an emperor, all finding value in Stoicism. It really highlights its adaptability.
Absolutely. It's not tied to any particular situation or type of person. These principles can apply to pretty much anyone, anywhere.
Okay, so we've covered what Stoicism is and its historical context. Now let's dive into those core principles. You mentioned the Stoic happiness triangle earlier. What are the three pillars?
The three interconnected elements are live with arete, focus on what you control, and love what happens. They really capture the essence of Stoicism, a guide to navigating life with more wisdom and resilience.
Live with arete, focus on what you control, and love what happens. Okay, let's break those down. Starting with live with arete, what does that actually mean in daily life?
So, arete is Greek for excellence or virtue. In Stoicism, it's about embodying your best self in every moment, using reason to guide your actions and living in line with your values. Think of it as aiming for moral and intellectual excellence in everything you do.
So it's not about being perfect, but about striving to be the best version of yourself.
Exactly. And a big part of this is recognizing what's truly good and bad. For Stoics, virtue is the only good and vice is the only bad. So you focus your energy on cultivating that inner excellence.
And the Stoics talked about living in accordance with nature. How does that fit in with arete?
They saw it in a few ways. First, by using our reason, our capacity for rational thought. Second, by living harmoniously with others, recognizing our social nature. And third, by accepting our place in the cosmos, that we're part of something bigger.
Makes sense. So reason, social responsibility, and a cosmic perspective. Our source mentions the four cardinal virtues as a way to understand arete. What are those?
Those are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance or self-discipline. Wisdom is having the knowledge to make sound judgments. Justice is about fairness, integrity, treating others well. Courage is acting rightly, even when afraid. And temperance is about moderation, balance in your desires.
Those are all admirable qualities. How do we actually cultivate them in our busy lives?
It takes effort, self-awareness, and practice. Seneca, for example, he did this nightly self-examination. He'd review his day, looking at what he did, what he said, thinking about where he could have acted more virtuously. It was like a daily character audit.
Holding yourself accountable, seeing where you lived up to your values and where you need to grow.
Exactly. Striving for virtue while acknowledging you're not perfect. Our source also gives the example of this soccer coach, Bruno, who was consistently fair and honest with his team. It led to more success and respect. It shows how those consistent actions, even small ones, build character.
And the Stoics emphasized acting for the greater good, right? How does that fit in?
They saw it as natural to our social nature. Marcus Aurelius used this analogy of a vine producing grapes. It doesn't expect anything in return. He argued that it's in our nature to act for the benefit of others, not for reward, but because it's the right thing to do.
So living with Aurelius is about individual excellence and contributing to the well-being of others.
Right. It's realizing we're interconnected. Acting justly towards others isn't just morally right. It creates a better society and benefits us too.
Okay, on to the next pillar of the Stoic happiness triangle. Focus on what you control. This seems key to the whole philosophy.
It really is. Epictetus starts his Enchiridion with this powerful line of things some are in our power and others are not. That distinction is fundamental. Stoics believe a lot of our suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting what we can influence.
So what falls into each category?
What's in our power is our judgments, beliefs, desires, and actions. We have direct control over those. But things like health, wealth, reputation, other people's opinions, external events, those are not fully in our control. We might influence them, but we can't guarantee the outcome.
So it's about focusing on our inner world, our thoughts and actions, rather than trying to manipulate the often unpredictable outer world.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius said to cultivate virtues that are totally in our power, like integrity, hard work, kindness. No external force can stop us from developing those.
Our source uses the story of William Tell to explain this. How does that fit in?
William Tell could control his aim, his focus, but he couldn't guarantee he'd hit the apple. The wind could change, his sun could move. It's about focusing on the process, on doing your best, but accepting that the outcome isn't always up to you. It's like archery. You control the shot, but not where it lands.
Focus on the effort, on acting with integrity, but don't get hung up on the results. Now, this idea of accepting what happens, does that mean we just become passive?
No, not at all. Acceptance doesn't mean you like it or approve of injustice. It means acknowledging reality, recognizing what you can't change, and then focusing on what you can do. Byron Katie, a contemporary teacher, said, "No one wants their children to get sick, but when these things happen, how can it be helpful to mentally argue with them?"
So accept what is, and then focus on your response, your actions moving forward.
Exactly. And the Stoics had this interesting way of categorizing things as good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, that's always intrigued me.
So, for them, the only true good is virtue, because that's in our control. The only true bad is vice. Everything else, health, wealth, even life and death, they considered indifferent.
Indifferent meaning.
Doesn't mean they're worthless. We'd obviously prefer health over sickness, wealth over poverty. But those things don't determine our happiness because they're not fully in our control.
So we can strive for those things, but our well-being shouldn't depend on having them or not.
Right. Our source uses this poker analogy. The hand you're dealt is indifferent. What matters is how you play it, the skill you bring to the game. Seneca said, "Life is neither good nor bad. It is the space for both good and bad. It's how we navigate that space that defines the quality of our lives."
And it's that focus on what we can control, on developing virtue, that makes us responsible for our own flourishing.
Absolutely. We have control over our judgments and actions, so we're ultimately the authors of our inner state. Even in tough times, we choose our response and can strive for virtue in how we handle things.
And it all boils down to perception, right? How we interpret what happens.
Totally. Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." We have so much power in how we judge things. An event is neutral. It's our interpretation that makes it seem good or bad.
That reminds me of Viktor Frankl's work on finding meaning in suffering.
Yes. Frankl's experience in concentration camps shows this so powerfully. Even in the worst imaginable circumstances, he recognized that freedom to choose his attitude. Our source talks about a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where our freedom lies, our ability to choose our reaction. Frankl's life proves that this inner freedom can never be taken away.
It's a powerful reminder of our inner strength. Okay, now for the third and maybe trickiest part of the triangle. Love what happens. How can we love difficulties and misfortunes?
It's not about enjoying suffering. It's about radical acceptance, understanding that everything is connected, working with reality, not against it. Stoics recognize that negative emotions come from resisting what is, from our judgments about what should be.
Adjusting our expectations, going with the flow, even when it's rough.
Yes. The author talks about getting annoyed when people didn't notice new toilet paper. Just shows how attached we get to these small expectations. Realizing the irrationality of it helped him let go of the negative feeling. It's about being aware of those judgments and not being ruled by them.
So, cultivating the inner strength to endure fears and manage desires, starting with awareness.
And the Stoics went further, suggesting that obstacles can actually be opportunities. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the heart of loving what happens.
What stands in the way becomes the way. That's quite a shift in perspective.
They saw challenges as forcing us to grow, to develop patience, resilience, problem solving. It's like resistance training for your character. Whether something's an obstacle or an opportunity depends on our judgment.
So when things go wrong, we can see it as a chance to learn and get stronger, to turn the obstacle upside down.
Exactly. It's about reframing your perspective. The same situation can be a source of misery or a chance to grow. Stoics encourage us to embrace those challenges.
This has been such a helpful conversation. We've really explored the core of Stoicism, virtue, focusing on what we can control and learning to accept what happens.
And it's important to remember that Stoicism is an active practice. It's ongoing self-reflection and living by these principles every day.
So listener, as you reflect on what we've discussed, what resonates most with you? Maybe it's focusing on your judgments, or that you always have a choice in how you respond.
Or perhaps think about applying these principles to a specific area where you're struggling, maybe managing a tough emotion or a difficult relationship.
And remember, this isn't about overnight change. It's a journey of growth. Progress happens step by step.
Here's something to think about. What situations or people tend to trigger those strong emotional reactions in you? How could applying the Stoic idea of focusing on your judgment change your experience of those situations?
That's a great question to ponder. We really encourage you to check out the sources we mentioned and explore Stoicism further. It might just provide the guidance you've been searching for.